Cities and innovation are changing at a rapid pace. What will our next decade look like? The possibilities are beyond imagination. I visited with Margalit at his JVC offices, the man on a mission with bold vision, utilizing tech and innovation to shape all aspects of our lives, one city at a time. Dr. Margalit is the founder and executive chairman of JVP and Margalit Startup City. The latest milestone is the launching of the International Climate Technology Center in New York. Eyal, in preparing for this interview, it was tempting to simply list each of the organizations you are responsible for, asking for a comment and maybe calling it a day. But what stands out in the myriad of the organizations as they link to a larger picture, multiplying their effectiveness? At the end of the day, what is it that you have accomplished?
I think that Israel from 25 years ago changed its economy, changed the way my generation is involved, and created a new creative industry technology which is changing the country and creating bridges to the world. But in order to do that, it's not just about business. It's about the business of inventing and creating the ecosystem in each of the cities that we are operating in to be able to let many people participate in the creativity. So here in Jerusalem, we're sitting in Margalit Startup City, Jerusalem. We have created an initiative between Jews and Arabs, between secular and religious, between Christians and Jews and Muslims, that are bringing people together. For us, innovation was about bringing the city together and creating a current creative narrative as much as we have an historical narrative. And then in the Galilee, we brought a whole new vision of creating the food tech initiative that is the international next big thing that Israel's doing. In Beersheba, cybersecurity, combining between the defense forces, the universities, and the technology sector to create a lot of new jobs in the south, in the desert city of Beersheba. So everything that we're doing is about creating great companies that are international and creating a lot of jobs and creating profit for people who are involved, but also enabling other people that are not necessarily among those who have today to be part of this. And this is what we're doing in Margalit Startup City, Bakehila, in the community, where we already reached about 50,000 kids around the countries, Jews and Arabs, that are able to come forward and participate in this great generation of the technology and the creative chapter of Israel.
At the end of the day, I'm going to look at a recent article, and it's interesting, described you in 3 characteristics. They said a visionary leader, a champion of innovation, and an engine for social change. If you had to give back 2, which ones would you give back?
I don't know. I like all of them. I like creating great companies and successful companies. I love the fact that I took 12 companies public on NASDAQ and brought some of the best Israeli unicorns to the forefront. But I also love the fact that this is now the 20th year that we're working with kids all over the country and creating math, Hebrew, English, Arabic, but also innovation, allowing the people that are sometimes behind, kids that are behind, to participate in this big new thing. And I like cities in general. I like other cities to participate. I like the fact that between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and the Galilee, we have New York. New York is participating with Israel. Because in Israel, we're a small country. And if we're going to win in a big way, we need to partner with other cities and other nationalities. And probably one of the most moving things that happened in the last few years is the ability of Israel to be part of the Arab world in the Middle East in a way that's win-win. So our first major travel with 15 companies to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to the UAE was a new chapter, because now we are cooperating around cybersecurity, around fintech, around agriculture, water, healthcare, IT. And what we're saying, that innovators are creating the new bridges in the region. And we're saying 10 cities, 10 ideas, 10 projects that will change the way you think about the Middle East. Let technology lead you, politicians will follow. So this room is filled with brains and people that are looking at companies, helping companies, all these young guys and gals, and are doing things that are really taking a company from its early stage and allowing it to grow in a big way. It needs a lot of support and a lot of thinking and a lot of ideas. And so, this is currently some of the companies that we're dealing with. Some of them have $100 million of revenue, 70, 120, or $2 million of revenue.
Well, you touched on many different areas, and let's kind of take one at a time. The first one, looking at, do you feel that this is something that Margalit can do alone, or do you need government involved, having been in government?
I think that all big projects require public-private partnership. So here in Jerusalem, when we started, there were no technology companies whatsoever. Today we have more than 20,000 employees in the technology sectors. We have some of the world's largest exits out of Jerusalem. We needed incentives to be able to bring both financial investors, large companies, and startups. The same thing that we did in Beersheba. We brought 40% of the wages of every employee in the cyber sector for 4 years that the government donated. We also agreed with the government that it would move the army bases of technology to the south. And we agreed that they would fund the University of Beersheba, Ben Gurion University, to become the major hotbed for cybersecurity and computer science. So every new initiative, even in New York, when we created the International Cyber Center, the City of New York partnered, the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, Columbia University, Cornell, NYU, CUNY, partnered with JVP as we created the International Cyber Center in Soho. These are some of the leaders, Shimon Peres, of course, the Prime Minister of Greece, Gwyneth Paltrow, some great people from around the world, because innovation for us in Israel is not just about business, it's about a bridge, and it creates sort of a political narrative as well.
A stone's throw away, you're going to be building more additions to what is your dream. What does that look like? Share it.
I think Jerusalem needs the Rothschild Boulevard of Tel Aviv in the center, with a train station, with light rail, with cafes in the bottom, with music and live music and artists, with piazzas because you'd like to meet people, and with technology that will change the world for the next generations, together with apartments, people that live together with innovation, together with small businesses, with culture, with commerce, with a great grid of a city between the German colony and Abu Tol and the old city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem needs a vibrant neighborhood that will bring the different people together to create, to live, to enjoy themselves. And this is what we're doing here. We're using innovation to open a new chapter for the city of Jerusalem. A chapter of creativity which is current, a chapter that sees the history of the city but invents something new. A lot of young people that are moving or staying in the city because it's the biggest university city in the country, so all you need is a few thousand.
But the housing issue is
That's right. So we're doing some affordable housing here for young people, some apartments for wealthy people, some for young people. You need that kind of mix.
Harel, what's going to bridge the gap between those that have and those that don't?
I think that that's what we're doing in Bakihila, in the community. We are working, my mother was an educator. My father was the head of a community center. So that's what I've learned when I was a kid. So we have 4 schools in the neighborhood and 1 community center, Matnas, in the middle. And so the volunteers, Shinshinim, the year of service volunteers that are postponing their army service for 1 year and living in the community, we have 66 of those per year, are coming in, working in the schools in the morning, creating learning centers in the afternoon, and then working in the community center in the evening, whether it's basketball or hip hop or whatever. And then together, these kids are being part of a community where they get great grades, but they also get attention. They have a big brother or a big sister. And the thing that is most moving in the last few years is that in these cities and these neighborhoods, every school creates an innovation center. So for example, in Kiryat Shmona, in the city in the north, 2 kilometers from the Lebanese border, all the kids in all the schools are now entrepreneurs as well, in food tech, in ag tech, in robotics, and they don't have to be the geniuses of the class. They can be very good at soccer or basketball but they are a part of a group that allows itself to have its word, to invent, and to be part of the innovation economy that Israel has, but in the far north. That's what moves me, and that I think is what gives these kids a chance to be part of the next generation of Israel's creativity.
Is there anywhere in the world that you see a comparison to what you've built?
I think that we see countries that are embracing their kids, like Finland in education, that are creating classes which you have projects of participation. We're doing these projects of innovation and allowing kids to participate. It's not always about the competition. It's not always about which kid is the best in the class. Sometimes it's about the community, and it's about working together as a team. We see this in sports, now we see this in education. And I think that in terms of innovation, I think Israel today is second to none because we're a very small country, but we have big ambitions, entrepreneurship, and people want to be part of it. And when we're working in New York and allowing, there's about 650 Israeli companies in New York right now, we are saying, well, if you're a great Israeli company and you want to be a true international market leader, you need to be present in New York, in London, in Hong Kong, in the different capitals of the world, so that you can be a big company, not only in terms of the invention, but also in terms of the go-to-market strategy.
Let's go back to the smart city scenario, which is feeding on local economy. And each place that you build it, at the center of each city, feeds on that. How do they interconnect?
I think after COVID, cities are either dying or reviving. And I think that for city to revive, they need two major messages. One, create for the younger community. Your city needs to be a piazza of creativity in technology and maybe some other creative elements. The second thing, cities need to be sustainable, because if you're a polluting city, you're a city that younger generations doesn't want to touch. And so sustainable cities and creative cities, startup cities as we call them, are the two major elements that cities need today in order to come back and be relevant for the younger generation of the country or the people around them. And I think that cities will have a challenge in the next few years because people are leaving the offices. They want to go out to the country after COVID because they're not always coming to the workplace. And we're saying for city to be relevant, create the place of meeting which is rare, which is interesting for the people, which combines a dialectic process of engagement, which combines the kind of values that you'd like to see. And the younger generation would like to see cities that control their air, control their water, control their energy, their transportation, the livelihood of the people, the healthcare systems. These are sustainable cities. This is part of the ClimateTech initiative that we're now adding to the cyber, to the food tech, to the fintech initiatives that we already had in the last 20 years.
Abraham Accords. There was a lot of secrecy for years in terms of Israel's relationship with the Arab world, although it's been going on for decades. What about your personal journey?
So the Abraham Accord are wonderful. We have been having some of our cyber companies operate in the UAE, maybe some other places in the region. We've had fintech companies operate. We now have food tech companies. The Abraham Accord gave us the ability to bring it out to the open. And now 15 of the JVP companies are actually having centers of excellence in each one of these countries. And through the UAE, through Dubai, Abu Dhabi, we're actually reaching Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, which is a new chapter for us, Bahrain, the rest of the Gulf region, and even places like Malaysia, Indonesia, which we didn't have too much dealings with. Even through India, we're getting with people from India that live in the UAE and are giving us a say when we try to come into this big country that is buying new technology and new things for agriculture as well.
What can you talk about openly? And I know this is more sensitive in terms of Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia right now, many of our companies are dealing with both banks in terms of cross-border payments, in terms of cybersecurity defense, in terms of things that are stopping money laundering or human trafficking or different things that countries want to be dealing with. So we are already dealing with about 10 banks in Saudi Arabia through our companies. Sometimes they look Israeli, sometimes they look international, and they come in. And that's amazing because we're seeing that Saudi Arabia can be the next big chapter for Israel. We're also protecting some of the energy sources, Aramco and some of the other sources. You have to understand that some of the biggest refinery and energy sources were the target of attacks from countries like Iran and some other terrorist organization. And when that happens, it's not only stopping production of oil, it's also creating the biggest pollution in the region.
As a former politician, if Iran was not in the mix, do you really think that you would see Israel aligning with these countries at the pace that it did happen? Mind you, there haven't been new countries that have been added to the list of those signing with the Abraham Accords.
I think that sometimes when you have a common enemy, it brings people together. But it's not only that. Countries in this region need a new chapter. They need a chapter in which the Middle East is not viewed as a place of strife, but a place of innovation. Let us remember, the Middle East was the Fertile Crescent in biblical time. This is the time where we had the first places of agriculture was Jericho. The first places where you had communities and cities were around here, anywhere between Turkey to Israel. And so these places want to come back and play a major role in terms of innovation. And sometimes cities are stronger than the countries that surround them, right? In our city in Jerusalem, I know that sometimes you see the political battles, but we have so much cooperation with the Arab and the Palestinian communities between Jews and Arabs. And we see Tel Aviv as the exciting city of Israel, for sure. You have the great bars and a great beach. We still don't have a beach in Jerusalem. We're trying to think about how to bring it here. But you do have diversity. So we think that Jerusalem, in the next phase of this region, will be the exciting city of the Middle East.
Climate change, we just left that out completely in that whole list, and it's something coming up soon. Why New York? And tell us about what you plan.
So climate change is the next big frontier because technology needs to start relating to climate, not only in mobility, which we already have, or alternative energy, which everybody knows. These are the two categories of climate, but also cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is today protecting the banks. Tomorrow it could protect the grid of the city that protects the energy and the livelihood of the city. Fintech trades between people, and so you have organizations which transfer money between all kinds of organizations. Well, you also need to trade CO2 emissions between companies, between countries. The fintech model of blockchains will be the new models that will allow you to do that and make sure that you're kosher from a climate standpoint. And then food. Our food needs to change. We cannot continue to slaughter 50 billion cows a year. We need alternative protein, like we have in InnovaPro and some other companies which provide alternative protein. We need smart agriculture because 97% of the world today is still, you use water in flooding. You just read today about the drought in France. In Europe too, there's water shortage, and you need drip irrigation so that you can save water and give the best nourishment for the plants. So food tech, climate, healthcare, fintech, all these are new categories that are coming into climate. And so in our center in New York, where we had a cyber center, we started with 8 companies, the International Cyber Center 2 years ago. We now have 35 scale-up companies. We now have companies that are coming into the ClimateTech. And together with BMW, with Mini, with the city of New York, we're launching the International ClimateTech Center in New York because New York is the city of cities, and cities are responsible for 75% of the CO2 emission in the world today. So if cities change, the world is saved, and the technologies that surround these cities are the technologies that are going to give hope. So what we're saying, let Israel and New York partner together in order to bring the next paradigm shift in climate change, which will allow you to think not about polar bears when you think about climate, but about unicorns.
Do you think Israel played a role in your success? Would it have been another country that could have given you this impetus and its natural growth and its natural capabilities?
Well, I'm from Israel. I was born in a kibbutz, the kibbutz that invented the sprinkler, although today we need drip irrigation, as I said. But it's also a kibbutz that beat Maccabi Tel Aviv, the national team, on a Friday night after it wasn't beaten for 10 years. So the David and Goliath is something that I grew up on, and David can win. So Israel is a small country with big dreams. I think it gave me and a lot of my generation, after we heard Yitzhak Rabin and some of the great leaders, it gave my generation a new chance, because the old economy in Israel was very centralized. The new economy is one which is about innovation, and it includes different parts of the population and allows them to create new things. Okay, so Tel Aviv is strong in certain industries, it's wonderful, but the Galilee can be the center in food tech. Beersheba can be the center in cyber. Haifa can be the center of healthcare IT, and Jerusalem, with Betzalel, with Sam Spiegel Film School, with Musrara Film and Photography School. Here we bring together creativity, art, and technology. So some of the next things that we're going to be doing here in Jerusalem will surprise people around the world and even in Tel Aviv.
You're about education and entrepreneurship. You've studied in this area extensively during your life. But if we look at the universities and the schools, and even starting younger, are they prepared for all this change? It's a different world.
It is. Well, some universities are and some are not. But I think the main thing that I got in university, I was studying mathematics and philosophy and different things that were not immediately practical, logic, but you learn how to think. You learn how to study. And if you're curious, you should give yourself the gift of studying what you really like, not be immediately practical. Because if you nourish your mind will nourish your livelihood. If you find the path to yourself, you can then find a path to anywhere you want to go.
Who's Aral Margalit's mentor?
My mentor, I wrote my doctoral thesis at Columbia. It was called The Entrepreneurs of History. And I was comparing between great business leaders and great political leaders. And I was saying that a great business leader, an entrepreneur, changes the rules of the game of their market. Pixar changed animation forever, even though Disney was a giant. Starbucks changed coffee in America forever, even though in America you were drinking coffee from plastic cups. So these ideas change their markets. Well, what are big leaders? Big leaders tell the narrative of their story anew. So Ben Gurion told a new story to our country to enable us, the Jewish people, to come here and to build our country. And Churchill, a person like that you see here, so many books about him, in 10 days in May 1940, changed the stake of the war, because it made it a war between good and evil rather than just a war for Britons to protect themselves. So I think that sometimes big ideas are causing big movement on the ground. Big ideas call for the creativity and the commitment for people. And I see my country, we had a great chapter where we built the technology ecosystem. Now we need to build it with the Arab community, with the ultra-Orthodox community, with the Galilee, with the South. And we need to use technology in order to create the bridges to this region. So it's not going to be just about whether the Israelis are fighting the Palestinians. It's going to be about a much bigger story. Israel can align together with the Palestinians, with a few Arab countries around here, and create a security alliance against the extremists and an economic alliance, which will build a region where Israel can play a part of. The international community can support it, and it's going to be a region that's thriving and not ailing.
Aral Margalit, appreciate your time. The entrepreneur's entrepreneur, and thank you for joining me at the Media Line. Aral Margalit believes that if cities change, the world is changed. Thank you for joining us at the Media Line.